Hello and welcome back to the opening Revelation series. I'm very excited to bring to you next subject. The subject of new moves and new ways to play in a very, very early stage of the game. And the reason why I'm excited because now we're going to look at two positions that about ages old. And everyone that plays these openings in those positions, they take for granted to play the way that has been played for decades. That's what I'm trying to change. I'm trying to change, of course, with the help of Rivka and with a careful examination and analysis based on careful examination and analysis. This is not just my opinion. I'm proving it and I'm backing it up with careful analysis. So let's start. We will discuss, first case will be Giuoco piano, position with the castle. Now, after castling, it's very well known that the best move is knight f6, and by far most common move knight f6. And it's been known that white should play d3 or c3, getting to the very well-known positions that have been played for decades. However, the move we want to discuss is d4. Now, d4 is not complete novelty. Well, although it's a new move but been played for almost a year and a half. And there were several games played, and the reason why it didn't attract much attention, because results were not very good for white. However, with careful analysis and Rivka's help, results should have been a lot better than they were. And let's see why. In this position, black must take the pawn on d4, and the best way to play for black is bishop takes. But before we start with it, that's the main move that was played over and over. Let's get out of the way two other moves. Knight takes d4 and pawn takes d4. Knight takes d4 we can denounce real quickly after knight takes e5 and f7 pawn hangs. After castling, white simply has a serious advantage. They can go bishop g5, they can go knight c3. White is doing very well. Simple advantage. Pawn takes d4. Pawn takes d4 is not, we are not going to analyze now because that will lead to very well-known positions that has been carefully analyzed over the years, and the final evaluation, white has some advantage. So the move we want to analyze is the main move, which is bishop takes d4, and it's been played by strong players, and black did very well. Black did very well but white did not play almost in any of the games, including the game that white won. I think white won on reasonable level only one game. And included that game, what white didn't play the best. Knight takes d4. And now black has to take back with the knight. But first, let's see what would happen if black took with a pawn. If black takes with a pawn, white goes e5. Obviously, knight takes e5 is bad because of rook e1, followed by f4. And if black responds with the standard d5, that will give them very bad position. After pawn takes knight, pawn takes c4, pawn takes g7, rook g8, and very powerful move in this position is queen h5. This gives white nearly winning position. Now, if black plays queen f6, bishop g5 is very strong. Queen takes g7, and you see black is attacking white's bishop, which cannot move because of the mate on g2. But nevertheless, black is almost lost. Rook e1 check. After rook e1 check, there is only one move for black, is bishop e6. And white is going to take on e6. Why that's the only one move? Because if king f8, bishop h6, knight e5 will be met by f4 with devastating results. So that leaves bishop e6, rook takes e6, and king d7. And looks like black may be okay because rook is hanging, bishop is hanging, and potentially g2 is hanging. But after rook takes c6, white simply maintains material advantage and nearly winning position. What would happen is after b takes c, they already have two minor pieces for rook. All they have to do is not to lose bishop. So they play queen h3 check, protecting g2 pawn, followed by bishop f4, and white is going to have winning position. Same thing is going to happen on king takes c6, queen f3 check, protecting g2 pawn, and bishop is going to move to f4. So that's why this is bad continuation for black. And I gotta mention one more move in this position. Instead of queen f6, black may try rook takes g7, but then still rook e1 check. And now black is forced to play knight e7 because king f8, bishop h6, and on bishop e6, rook will take on e6. So knight e7 is forced, and after knight a3, let's quickly summarize the situation. White is only one pawn down. They're going to get it back very next move. And what about the position? Black has no safe way for their king. They're going to lose the pawn, and they have lots of problems that are very difficult to solve. Keep in mind, bishop e6 will always be met by rook takes e6. That's what makes queen h5 move so powerful. Now that we got these both captures, on d4 out of the way, let's talk about the main move, which is bishop takes d4. Bishop takes d4 after e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, bishop c5, castle, knight f6, d4. Now bishop takes d4, knight takes d4, and knight takes d4. Finally, we got to the key position of whole variation. In every game that was played was f4, d6, fe, de, and now bishop g5. And without a doubt, the best move, and that was played by black in every game, and also suggested by Ripka for black, is queen e7. There is almost no other way to play for black. The only other move that black may play, bishop e6, but this move does not have independent value, because on queen e7 white would play knight a3 and bishop e6. It's a simple transposition, and that's how it was played in every game. So let's play queen e7, knight a3, bishop e6. That's the game that white lost. Now, someone who follows theory, they see the game that was convincingly won by black, so there is no reason that why they wouldn't go for it. And that's exactly what happened in Movsesian-Leko game. After queen e7, c3, well, in this position was c3, and I already mentioned that black can do it two different ways. They can start with bishop e6, and on knight e3, by far best move, queen e7, or they can start with queen e7, white would go c3, and on bishop e6, knight a3. This is identical position. And now bishop c4 was played. Bishop takes c4. Bishop takes f6. Pawn takes f6. Knight takes c4. This is the game between Movsesian and Leko that black won convincingly. And this opening was put away for a long time until until Movsesian played it with white against Adams. So what happened in that game? Knight e6, white went knight e3 to get comfortable square, very powerful square on f5 for knight and possibly d5. And white has a deficit of one pawn, which is not really as important in this case, since pawn is doubled and weak. But here we get into the critical mistakes. After knight e3, queen c5, and queen e1 was played by Movsesian. This is a bad move. And let me explain you why. That helps. White has sacrificed the pawn, and they have uncomfortable king's position and weaknesses on f-file and potentially knight f5. So why don't we create more problems for black. Why don't we make their life more difficult? On queen c5, queen e1 was a mistake, because what happened in the game, castle, king h1, and here g3 should have been played. It still may be okay for white. But the main mistake was queen e1. Correct move is queen d2 to disallow castling long. Now if black plays rook d8, then we're gonna go queen f2, and this will be position that I really like very much. Possible knight f5, on rook d3, maybe knight d5, and I think white has an advantage, and serious 1-2. So this is one mistake was played, queen e1, and after castle black is doing very well. That turned to black's advantage. Now let's look at different continuations. In one of the game played between also two strong players, black chose to play queen c5 instead of knight e6. Now, queen c5 was played, and black again got very good positions. And the next game was played, black again got very good position. And amazingly, it's hard actually to imagine that some good players play this with black, all different variations, then always they get good positions. But the secret is that white played wrong in every game. After queen c5, cd was played, queen takes c4, and now de was played. After rook d8, white got no advantage, and actually we don't have to look what happened later on in this game. Game ended in a draw. White never had an advantage. Okay, where's white's advantage here? This position is much better for white after rook c1 move. Here black has dilemma. They cannot protect c7 pawn. They can play queen takes d4, queen takes a2. In both cases, they will have material advantage, and in both cases, they're going to have bad position. Case 1, queen takes d4, will be met by queen takes d4, ed, rook takes c7, and now the best move is castling, and now rook takes f6. Now pawns are even. Black is much, much worse. So on rook c8, we can simply take on b7 pawn. b7 is weak, f7 is weak. Pawns are even, white's king is close to the center. White has clear advantage. This is case 1. Now let's go to a different move in this position. That's where white went wrong in this position. So rook c1 we played. The other way to play is queen takes a2. That too not very good, because rook takes c7, queen takes b2, rook takes f6. Very, very difficult position for black. Even if they try to go to the end game, position remains very difficult for them. Two rooks on a 7th rank, they will be terrorizing black for the rest of the game, which is not going to be long. Very bad position for black. There is a game that played also against two very strong Russian players, and after queen c5, that's exactly position from game Movsesian-Leko, where Movsesian played bad move queen e1. Queen d2 was played there. And we mentioned it, this is necessary move to prevent black from castling long. And now after rook d8, white played in this position queen to e2. It's not a bad move, but I like better, and so is Rybka, queen f2, giving white some advantage. And here is the possible variation: rook g8, king h1, rook g6, now simply rook a d1. See, white doesn't have to make some very aggressive plays here. Black has practically no material advantage, one pawn, which is a double pawn on f file, and white's knight has a lot better future for d5 or f5 squares. Rook d1, it's a quiet move, and on queen b6, simply go g3, prevent potentials of black's knight on f4, and after rook takes d1, it's possible variation, and on king f8, we can simply go queen e2. Now let's evaluate this position. Black's king will never be safe. If they go to g7, knight f5 will be terrorizing this king. And that's how you evaluate a position. Now, what does black have? Black have extra pawn and totally discoordinated pieces. Rook on g6 has only one function: to protect the f6 pawn. Knight on e6 does not have any reasonably good square. The only good thing that it does guards the d8 square from white's rook's penetration. And queen on b6, it's also very hard to determine what it does. Knight on f5, owning the d file, it's white's main advantage here, and also the squares on d5 and f5 makes white's position, I would say, nearly winning. Big advantage, at least. Rybka thinks it's a big advantage, but on Rybka's language, when she has good size advantage, it's winning advantage. So this position is very bad, and one good reason why this opening is so good. Now we're going to get to the one more example of playing for black. Suppose in this position, black simply wants to play knight c6 back. And it does make sense because black doesn't want to take on c4 to let white's knight come with a tempo into the game. So knight c6 is the move that makes sense. So we have to go king h1 to prevent queen check in number of variation. King h1, and at the same time notice that we don't let black castle. Castle, I mean long side. Castling short will always give white chances for kingside attack after opening the king. So after knight c6, king h1 is the move, and we're analyzing now rook d8, queen e2, all the logical moves, h6, bishop takes f6, pawn takes f6. What black does, they try to keep white's knight on a3. They don't take on c4 to let knight come into the game and to the weak squares, as I already mentioned. So what we do, and that I mentioned too, we can slowly build up the position. That's the kind of pawn sacrifice that has a lot of positional values, and we try to explore them slowly. Just simple primitive move, rook f2, rook g8, pawn has to be protected after rook f1, rook g6. Now, white has all their pieces mobilized perfectly, with an exception of knight on a3. That's why black didn't take the bishop on c4. Now, in this position, we should go knight c2, and on king f8, knight e3, knight b8, black tries to bring knight to the better position, queen h5, king g7, queen f3, king h7. And here, knight d5. This is the game between Movsesian and Adams. Well, in this position, knight d5 was played, which in Rivka's opinion is a serious mistake. The correct move is knight to f5, and after bishop takes f5, it's typical here. Bishop f5 takes f5 must be played, because if queen e8, white will take the bishop on e6, and after pawn takes e6, knight h4, winning the f6 pawn and having nearly winning position. And after bishop takes f5, all of a sudden white completely changing the plan, playing e takes f, and now after e takes f, position is terrible for black. Rook has to move to g7 possibly. Queen takes b7 gives white very serious advantage. So they have advantage in a pawn structure. After queen c5 we can go queen e4, we have serious advantage in pawn structure and also piece location. We're going to go b4, a4, and white is much, much better. Rook on g7 is not very good. King side is still not safe for black, and white holds big advantage. So here is the summary. The whole variation, castling knight f6 in d4, is very playable for white, and by far the possibilities are not exhausted, and as it normally happens, theory develops on and on and on, and we are far now from hearing the last word. Anyway, this is some very interesting variation to play. But I'm going to show you something else. This is on my own, just interesting observation, and I want to share it with you. Instead of castling in this position, I was exploring a little bit with Ripka possibility of d4 right away. In other words, without castling in knight f6. So what would happen, and how does it make any difference to play d4 on move 4 or to play d4 on move 5? Let's look. On d4, bishop takes d4, knight takes d4, and now knight takes d4. But knight takes d4, of course, is the main continuation, it should be. But I looked a little bit at ed as well. On ed, this is something that has not been played. We would castle, and black has two different ways to play: to just continue development, or for any cost try to hold on to an extra pawn. So they go d6 either way, and now we want to get our pawn back. And if we take our pawn on d4, we're going to have some advantage. If black tries to stop us by playing queen f6 to keep an extra pawn, then we can go c3. And I think black is risking getting very bad position. Because if pawn takes c3, knight takes c3, coming knight d5, and white's initiative may become very serious and threatening. On knight d7, still knight d5. At this point, black has already very, very bad position. So this is one way to play. After ed, we simply castle. But now let's go to the main knight takes d4 continuation. We would go f4. Now d6 is the most expected and practically the only reasonable move. We're gonna castle, and now black has some choices. We are threatening to take on e5 and take on f7. So black can play knight f6 as one option, where we have, on the other hand, option of playing pawn takes pawn, and transposing to the variations. We just looked in the first part of the DVD. This is one. And secondly, we could try bishop e3. So what else can black do besides knight f6? They can go bishop e6. Then we go knight a3. Well, then I gotta point to you that all black has to do is to finish development, and they're gonna be doing very well. And actually, after knight a3, black may go queen e7. It's a good defensive move, because in case white plays c3 and knight c6, they want to have support for the bishop on e6. Besides, queen e7 is a part of development, because black may want to consider castling long. And actually, I looked at this position together with Rivka, and I saw that white can get some good position, and then Rivka's incredible touch just confirmed that. Bishop e3. Let's suppose bishop takes c4, knight takes c4, and knight c6. I believe white has an initiative here, but Rivka convincingly proved it. Queen g4, and now g6. Looks like black is perfectly safe, but after f takes e, black has two continuations: pawn takes and knight takes. Let's see what would happen if pawn takes. You're going to see some incredible tactics by Rivka here that proves that black's position is very bad. Rook a d1, and after knight f6, rook takes f6. This is very powerful. Queen takes f6, queen d7 check, king f8, bishop h6, king g8, queen takes c7. Black's king is very badly placed and threatening queen takes b7. And if black plays g5, here comes a shocking continuation. Knight takes e5. This is just way too powerful for black, and black loses in like next 2-3 moves. Knight can be taken both ways, and black loses both ways. Cannot be taken the bishop because checkmate on f7. So if queen takes, there is absolutely shocking move, rook d5, attacking the queen, and ending the game, because on queen takes c7, rook takes g5 is a checkmate, and on queen f6, rook takes g5, and black is completely lost, and there is no other move. This is very powerful. And now what happens if knight takes e5, then rook d6. White is a rook down, but black can resign here, because any queen move out of the way will result to a checkmate, and after queen takes d6, queen takes d6, black is absolutely busted as well. This is not good. Actually, that was pretty convincing. Now let's look at the different continuation, which is pawn takes. What will happen if black takes with the pawn on e5? Here is we're setting the position with the queen g4, knight is on c4, and knight is on g8. When we take on fe, and if knight takes c5. Okay, on knight takes c5, we're gonna play knight takes c5, queen takes e5, rook a to d1, threatening bishop d4, and black has no way to complete development. On queen e6, queen g5, threatening queen b5 check and picking up on b7 pawn, and also stopping black from castling queenside because of queen on g5. And after queen g5, a6, bishop d4, and after f6, it's very bad position. Bishop takes f6, knight takes f6, rook takes f6, and on queen takes e4, rook f4, with very difficult game for black, and on queen e6, simply rook d to f1. I think black is lost here. White's initiative is overwhelming. There's actually another way to play. So we can play d4 on move 4 rather than on move 5, just adding a little more spice to the position. And in any case, white is doing real well. So the final word about whole idea of d4 without c3 in Giuoco piano, bishop c4, bishop c5. So we can play d4 right away, or we can play d4 after castling and knight f6. We can play d4. And interesting to notice that d4 move was not even mentioned a couple of years ago. Nobody has ever played it. Although I saw games played almost 100 years ago, but they did that without backing it with any analysis, any knowledge, and games were on a very low level. We don't count those games. We're only talking about games played recently, and not just recently, on a reasonable level. That's the good indication of validity of this certain continuation and certain opening variation. Next thing I want to discuss with you is very well-known position and very, very old position. This is e45, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4. So whole DVD we have starts with this position. And now knight f6, very well-known knight g5 move, d5, ed. I have to point, there are several different moves here. There is knight a5 main move, there is b5 move, but by far the main move and most important move, most popular move, like 90% of the time you can see, is knight a5. We go bishop b5 check, c6, d takes c, b takes c, and white has whole bunch of different continuations here. White has bishop e2, the main move. White has queen f3 move, and bishop e2 move actually has several different ways can be played. h6 main move for black, and now knight f3, which is the main theory, and knight h3 move played by Fischer. So what we want to discuss is continuation that I believe gives white an advantage, and there were some games we will examine them very carefully, played with it, although not too many games. That's what makes this especially valuable, this novelty. And I want to bring to your attention, defend, and prove that this move that was analyzed by me together with the greatest support of Ripka is bishop d3, which gives white certain advantage, and which was known as a not good move. So let's start analyzing variations after bishop d3, and I can assure you that this move I spent quite a bit of time analyzing with Ripka, analyzing all the games being played with it, and I came to conclusion this move gives white an advantage. And after bishop d3 there are several possible continuations for black. One of them is h6. One of them is bishop e7. One of the main ones is knight g4, and even knight d5 that was played almost like a month ago or even less by black and was won by black. But if black did well in any game where result was good for them, white went wrong. And I have to tell you, unless you analyze it properly, this position, this start position, unless you play very precisely, it's easy to get bad position with white. But on the other hand, if you prepared well for white and studied the variation, you do get a sizable advantage. So let's start looking at this position. Let's start with bishop e7 move. White castles, black castles, knight c3 and h6. This is critical position. Actually, the critical question, and it's very important question. You know, when you have knight on g5 cannot stand for very long. Knight has to be retreated. In one case, it will go to e4. In some other cases, it will go to f3. And it's very important not to make mistake about it. After h6, in the game we're going to look now, white played knight e4, which is a serious mistake. They got bad position and they lost the game. Now, because after knight e4, knight d5 was played, and now black is going to play f5 on e4, roll its central pawns, and white is going to have serious problems. Correct move is knight f3, not to give black this option, and at the same time attacking e5 pawn. In my opinion, white has big advantage here. For example, on knight f3, pawn has to be protected, and if bishop d6, rook e1, rook e8, and now I would go h3, move recommended by Ripka, who normally doesn't like to make prophylactic move without a need. So h3 is played to stop bishop g4, and after, well, h3 is recommended, and after h3, if black goes knight d5, white will play knight e4, hitting the bishop on d6, and f5 will clearly favor white, because they're gonna take on d6, and now they're gonna retreat the bishop on f1, followed by d3, and they have very solid position with extra pawn, maybe later go g3 and bishop g2, since e4 does not give black desirable results, and white doesn't have to move the knight because the rook on e8 is not protected, and after d3 white has serious advantage. So, and what is going to happen if black moves bishop to c7? Now they still want to go f5 and e4, but then white plays knight g4, and they control f5 square. f5 cannot be played, and in the future, as you can see from some different examples, white may play bishop f5, exchanging light square bishops, and go d3, and then black will have absolutely no compensation, especially with the knight on a5, terribly placed piece. So this is one game example where black did well. Black actually did very well, but white's bad play takes credit for black's good result. So now let's look at a different game played also with bishop e7 move in this position. White played knight c3 here. This move also can be played. In the first example we saw castle, castling, and castling. Now we transpose to the same position. And in this position h6 was played, and white made correct move, knight f3. White played correct move because much stronger player played who understood the ideas of this opening. Morozevich was playing, very famous grandmaster. Bishop g4 was playing by Karyakin, another strong player. h3, bishop h5, and bishop e2 was played by Morozevich. I don't like this move, and neither is Rybka. Rybka likes rook e1 and proves that white has very, very serious advantage. Attacking e5 pawn, threatening rook takes e5, controlling all pieces on the fifth rank. And after rook e1, knight d7 has to be played, and this is logical. Now black wants to go f5, and they will have very dangerous initiative. But after knight d7, bishop f5 is very strong. Now white is threatening bishop takes d7 and take the e5 pawn. And after bishop f5, rook e8, white simply plays d3. And you see, that's how you should play. You should stop immediate pawn storm by black, like f5 and e4. So in this position, after d3, white is almost winning. Now on g6, of course, we can go bishop g4, or maybe even bishop takes d7, but bishop g4 is nearly winning. And if in this position black plays bishop d6, then white can go g4, having absolutely winning position after bishop g6. Bishop takes, pawn takes, knight e4, having very good position with extra pawn, well, I would say it's automatically winning position. So that's how even strongest players can make a mistake. And here Morozevich definitely made a mistake playing in this position, bishop e2, instead of rook e1. Rook e1 was very, very strong move. So let's go back to the start position and look at some other continuations. This is our start position of this variation. So we looked at possible moves. One possible move, bishop e7. Okay, let's start looking at h6. On h6, we shouldn't go to f3 because of e4 fork. We must go knight e4, and that's very obvious. And black has to play knight d5 to try to start pawn storm. I have to point that knight takes e4 is not good because bishop takes, and white is going to go d3 next move, and f5 doesn't work because of queen h5 check, winning the game. So knight d5 is the only move that makes sense here. Well, the very big supporter of this variation is a Dutch Grandmaster Daniel Stelwagen, and he has some good games he played with white, but he too, as we will see from this game and a couple of other games later on in the tape, so he too made some significant mistakes, because there is no Grandmaster that is on level of Rybka, and Rybka's analysis prove that white has advantage in every position. So now knight d5, white castles, black plays bishop e7. As I mentioned, f5 is not good because always this check. Bishop e7, black wants to castle first, knight g3. As I said, we established the control on f5 square. So g6, preventing white's pieces to go to f5. It's a very logical move. Rook e1, queen c7, and here b3 was played by Stelwagen. This move, although white did win the game, I don't like nearly as much as recommended by Rybka. Very strong move, bishop f1. And the reason this move is very strong, because it's very difficult for black to stop d4. So for example, on castle we go d4, and why d4 is so powerful? Because it opens the center, attacks h6 pawn. You see the weakness on h6, and bishop is very well placed on c1 on that diagonal. After d4, e takes d, queen takes d4, and if bishop f6 attacking queen, then queen a4. You see there is a big weakness. Knight is bad, and this position is nearly winning for white. Black has too many problems protecting pawn on h6, worrying about knight on a5, and being a pawn down. This is simply very, very bad position for black. Going back to the start position, and let's see one more game played with h6. Getting to the original position of the variation, and there is another game played with h6, knight e4, knight d5, white castles, bishop e7, bishop e2. Again, the bad move, and therefore is a very bad result. Just to prove my point, on bishop e2 castle, and black played f5, got very strong position. Correct move, rook e1 and knight g3, as we just saw from the previous game, or even knight g3 right away. When black plays g6, then we castle, and when black castles, rook e1, and on queen c7, we already saw bishop f1. So h6 variation does not represent any danger to white. And black has to, well, you see, in this variation, beginning the position we are looking, this is the start position of the variation. Black has to act quick to get an initiative, because they have outside knight on a5, terribly placed, and they are pawn down. They have to capitalize on slight advantage in development and start creating immediate threats. In addition, let's look at one more game. Actually, not the knight d5 that I mentioned to you, but bishop e7 still was played less than a month ago in a game between two of the very high-level grandmasters, Czechoslovakian David Navara and Ukrainian Tomaszewski. Tomaszewski won just now European Personal Championship. And let's see what happened in that game. Actually, in that game, what happened, the same thing that happened in the other game we already mentioned, which is bishop e7, black just played castle, h6, knight f3, or knight e4, two moves. Knight f3, on knight f3, e4. Knight f3 loses, actually, knight e4 was played. Knight d5, knight g3, correct move, g6, rook e1, and queen c7. We already looked at that position. It's sometimes what amazes me that game like this was played. Position is nearly losing for black. However, black plays it again. And the second time, white fails to find the correct plan, and white lost this game. Actually, David Navara lost this game. He played in this position a3, which is not that bad with idea of b4. We go a little more with this game, but I want to show you what should have been done. We already mentioned we had this position. Bishop f1 is a very powerful move with the idea of d4. Black is going to have to castle eventually, and d4 is going to open the center. Pawn on h6 is hanging, which will require black to lose another tempo, and they are pawned down with a terrible knight on a5. That just makes no sense. Why should black be playing this position? Nevertheless, it was played again. Black won the game, but black was worse, like throughout whole game. Navara played a3. And the reason why we should go on, even though with this game, even though we know that bishop f1 was the best move, we know that. But I still want to go on. And the only reason for that, just to show you how bad black's position is and how they have absolutely zero compensation. Best move, bishop f1, a3 was played, castle, b4, knight b7, bishop b2, bishop f6, knight c3, bishop g7, and here, according to Ripka, white is getting decisive advantage by taking. This is another strongest points of Ripka. Not too many humans would do that. I know normally I wouldn't do it, but I want to show you what concrete approach to the position means. C takes D, and that's Ripka's evaluation. Rook C1. It's absolutely concrete approach. Normally you wouldn't want to take the knight on D5 and give black very powerful center, but rook c1 preparing c4, and black is not doing well because there is bishop on c8. So suppose they go bishop e6, we can go after bishop e6, we can go queen e2, and on e4 just exchange bishops and go bishop a6. You see the position is totally lost for white, or for black. Black is going to go d3 or c4. They have extra pawns. Very unnatural place for knight. King on g7 is not placed well. And all white's pieces working together. d3 and c4, as I mentioned. Also f3. Black has zero compensation, and I think white has better position with extra pawn. So therefore they are totally winning. One other move has to be mentioned. It was played in a relatively high level game, well, at least on a high enough level to mention that move. The move is in this position, and the move is bishop g4, attacking queen. Now, after bishop g4, in this position, white played bishop e2, which is by far not the best continuation, but white won the game anyway. In the game happened bishop f5, d3, h6, knight f3. Black has little bit of space, more space, as a compensation for deficit of a pawn, which is not enough. However, white could have done even better. Here is the Ripka suggestion. f3, bishop h5, queen e2. Very original and powerful play. Knight d7, protecting the pawn, attacking the knight. Knight e4. f5 cannot be played because knight g3 attacks two targets. And after knight e4, bishop e7, knight f2, very strong move. And you will see the idea. Castle, knight f2, stops f5 again, and after castle, here is what white will do here. It's actually very thematic to see how white gets slowly winning position. Bishop g6, bishop takes g6, pawn takes g6, and bishop, there is knight here on b1, and bishop will be developed on b2. b3 is played, knight b7, b3 also totally cuts off the a5 knight from play, from the game. Knight b7, bishop b2, knight bc5, knight a3, getting very nice outpost for the knight on c4. And after knight e6, we could go knight d3 here, but knight c4 is stronger. And after knight f4, queen f1, I would say that black is totally lost. Now, here's the reason why. Outpost on c4 is very strong for the knight. Black does not have a pawn on b file or d file to attack this knight. The f4 knight is the only stronghold by the black will be exchanged by knight d3 or knight h3, and black will have strategically bad position with a pawn down, not to mention white's potential attack with h4, h5, when black's attack with a5 can be stopped with a4. So white is unconditionally winning this position. So going back now, what do we have left? What we have left is probably the most controversial and, well, at least what was known, the best continuation for black, which is knight to g4 move in this position. Now, knight g4 move was played in a very famous game between Stellwagen, that's the Dutch grandmaster that I mentioned. He did a lot of work in this opening, but his work is very far from perfect. And we give you the perfect analysis of this position. So, knight g4 attacks the knight on g5, and white must play knight e4. f5, and it looks like black is going to be rolling, but no, bishop e2. Stellwagen played this game against another grandmaster, actually very strong grandmaster, and they were both very well, I know this for a fact, very well prepared for this game. Game ended in a draw for a wrong reason. Game ended in a draw, but white missed very powerful continuation, and we're going to show it to you. Bishop e2, h5 is the best move. Next several moves are absolutely best. h3, black must take on e4, because knight f6 makes no sense because white can simply exchange, and h5 and f5 cannot be justified. F takes e, h takes g, and the bishop c5. I have to point to you, I would be very skeptical playing this position for white. I think white's position at least looks very dangerous. But what is a danger in chess? Danger in chess, that means you may get killed or you may survive. But if it's calculated risk, and with Ripke's analysis, it's proven that it's not good for black. And that's how exactly happened in Stellwagen's game that we just mentioned. Bishop c5, and here white has two continuations. One is knight c3, that when I analyzed this position with Ripka for a long time, Ripka thought that this move gives serious advantage, and it doesn't. It doesn't because on knight c3, queen d4, and if white castles, black castles, white goes queen e1, black takes h takes g, and at first we thought d3 move gives good size advantage. The true evaluation of this position, that white has very tiny edge, and we don't want to play like this for white. After d3, e takes d3, bishop takes d3, may be played, and now rook takes f2, rook takes f2 is bad because g3, queen takes f2, queen takes f2, rook takes f2, and g3. After possible knight e4, g takes f, and king f1, I don't think there is a need of going to long analysis. All I can tell you that white is a little better here, and that's by far not the best we can expect from this opening. Now let's go to the position where white has a lot stronger continuation. And after I analyzed this game, I was, for a wrong reason, I was very impressed with white's Stellwagen's play. I was very impressed because he played b4 move. This is the best move for white, but Stellwagen played this b4 move for a wrong reason. He had in mind wrong continuation, and he played wrong, and game ended quickly in a draw. b4. After b4, the only move black has is a queen d4. Now, because bishop takes f2 is not good, because king will take on f2, and after queen d4 check, when black takes the rook on a1, the knight will be hanging, and black is going to have nearly lost position. So queen d4 has to be played. That's how it happened in the game. Pawn takes bishop. Now black cannot take on a1 because after knight c3 they have very bad position. So they have to make in between move, which is castling, threatening mate on f2. White has to castle. Queen takes a1, knight c3. This is the key position of whole variation. I can tell you this: if this position wasn't as good for white as it is, white has big advantage here. Then whole variation would have been very questionable for white. This is the key position, and I spent a lot of time with Ripka actually analyzing this position, and we came to conclusion that white has a big edge. Ripka recommends e3 as the best move, and actually that's exactly what happened in that game in Stellwagen's. We're going to show you where Stellwagen went wrong and game ended to a draw. e3. The idea of e3 move is to exchange rooks. Now, because if white takes, rooks will be exchanged. White cannot take with d pawn because knight is hanging. And if white takes on h5, that's what they have to do, then black is going to take on f2 and rooks will be exchanged. Now let me explain you why is it so important for black to exchange rooks. Because black may be in, for example, in a position like this, if this happens and the pieces are exchanged, black is in a grave danger of losing the queen. This rook is a very powerful piece. Those threats will remain forever. So there, according to Ripka, there is no other move than e3, and gh was played. That's true, correct move. G takes, e takes f, rook takes f2, rook takes f2, king takes f2. And in this position, after king takes f2, bishop e6 was played, and bishop f3. Now, I'm quoting you the game with the way the game went and ended in a draw. Rook f8, king g3. White has 2 pawns for exchange. Black played bishop takes a2, and game short after queen e1 shortly ended in a draw. So we don't end up, based on Ripka's analysis, white has no advantage. But where could white divert from this position and get winning position? It's almost very hard to detect where white could play better and what shatters this evaluation. As it turned out, that everything that was played until now was perfectly played from both sides. And I am sure that both players analyzed this position with a great help of a computer engine. And here, only very deep analysis give white winning continuation. In a game, as I already mentioned, bishop f3 was played, and game ended in a draw. But the winning move is, it's only after you look at it carefully and examine it, it's a positional approach together with endgame evaluation. We came to conclusion that bishop a3, move that's suggested by Ripka, is nearly winning. So, and if we take in consideration that nowhere in the game black could have played better, and if they did something else, they would have had even a worse position, that brings us to conclusion that whole thing is very bad for black. Now, let's go on a little bit with this position. After bishop a3, queens have to be exchanged. Bishop takes d1, rook f8 check, or black could have played rook f8 check first and white would have went king g3, which is just simply the changing move order, transposing to the same position. And if rook f1, then we simply go bishop e2, but possible continuation is g6. I show you what happens in both cases. After g6, we go d3, gh, bishop takes h5, rook b8, bishop f3, king f7, king f2. Let's talk about this position. You see material equality here. Black is, in my opinion, absolutely lost. Terrible knight on a5, weakness on c6, tremendous outpost for white's knight on e4. In hands of a reasonable player, and I'm not talking very good player, a reasonable player, this is a sure win. This is one continuation. The other possible option for black is to play rook to f1. But rook to f1 doesn't change anything, because after rook f1, white simply plays d3, the same plan. White is going to do the same thing. Bishop f3, chase this knight away, weak pawn on c6, everything remains the same. The nature of position remains the same. I gotta tell you, add one more thing here. If black tries to steal a pawn on a2, it's not gonna work, because now they're gonna lose the game. After bishop e2, attacking rook, and now bishop is hanging. If rook a1, then bishop b2, attacking rook, bishop is hanging. And if rook goes rook e1, then king f2, and on rook h1, you see white will not take the bishop because rook a1 move. So white wins here. After bishop b4, black simply can resign, they lose another piece. If black cannot steal a pawn, if they cannot win the a2 pawn, then rook f1 makes no sense. It absolutely produces no result. If there is no result in rook f1 and white wants to do this, d3, knight f3, bishop f3, knight e4, potentially weakness, terrible knight, and king f2, king e3, and pushing pawns. Well, black exchanging the h pawn, white's h pawn on g pawn, doesn't change anything. The position and pawn structure here is very static, and position, well, Ripka gives clear advantage to white, and I would say, because human approach here is very helpful, because in static positions it's okay to suggest, give clearer evaluation than computer engines do. In my opinion, white is simply winning. And this is all about this opening variation. So the summary, I want to bring you the summary. Here is what I want to tell you. To round up everything about this opening, about this two-knight defense and knight g5 variation, which you can hardly see today in a tournament chess, has been shattered for white. Now, with the help of Ripka, I'm bringing it back. And I can tell you, after knight g5, d5, ed, knight a5, this position is clearly better for white after bishop d3. The couple of other things that we didn't cover on this DVD, because they have nothing to do with this variation, is on knight g5 there is a bishop c5 move. There's a well-known move, does not have a great reputation for black. You can find some games that's something you have to do on your own. It has nothing to do with a variation we're introducing to you today. And the other continuation is d5 ed, knight takes d5, which called after knight takes f7. By the way, white does not have to do that. It's a fried liver attack. This is something you have to do research on your own, because it's unrelated to the concrete variation I'm proposing and suggesting. And finally, the third move, which is not very strong, knight a5, bishop b5, is bishop d7 move. And after queen e2, it's well known that black does not have compensation for sacrificed pawn. And summary is this: white, in the main continuations and in well-formed opinion that after bishop b5, c6, d takes c, b takes c, this position is evaluated in theory as a good position for black, which is at least equal. We now kind of refuting it with bishop d3 move, and I can make clear statement that after bishop d3, black has to look for new ways for any compensation here, if there is any. So now I am suggesting you play this variation, and you should have very good results if you play both in two knights defense, the pawn sacrifice, and the Giuoco piano, accepting pawn sacrifice. You should play them the way I suggest on this DVD, and you should have good results. Good luck, and thank you very, very much. This is the bonus part of our DVD, and I want to inform you that you probably know yourself that theory, modern theory, updates in incredible speed, especially now when computer engines are in great help. So I have to bring some interesting revelation in the opening we were exploring in the first part of this DVD, bishop c4, bishop c5. And we mentioned that there is d4 here, and there is also d4 after castling, and knight f6, d4 here. To show you how endless the possibilities are, bishop takes d4. We already discussed this in the first part of the DVD, and here is what the bonus is about. We played f4, d6, f takes e, d takes c. All this was discussed already. Bishop g5, queen e7, knight a3. And here, every game that was played, every one of them was played with bishop e6 variation, and that's why we only analyzed bishop e6. But it's just fair that when we search vigorously for white to find some kind of attacking possibilities, it's just fair to look at very, very powerful defenses for black. And when I started looking, and I was very skeptical to this pawn sacrifice, and I always, when I try to invent something new and show something new, I'm looking for refutations of these novelties. And I looked for that too, but bishop e6 looks so natural and so strong that no other move was made by any player, and only strong players I'm talking about. However, when I let Rybka think about possibilities in this position, it took a while, and Rybka came out with some ingenious defense, ingenious opportunity for black. Move that normally I would consider, and so will anyone else, will consider ridiculous and totally unsound. And under normal circumstances, I wouldn't even take it seriously. The move is rook g8, and I have to mention that this is by far the best move for black. Now, this is very, very unusual, as I already mentioned. Now, what's the point of this move? There is a very deep point. If you watched carefully the first part of this DVD, you probably saw that black could never castle queenside. If black doesn't castle queenside, they have always problem safeguarding their king. Well, in the variations bishop e6, c3, there is always black one tempo short from castling. Rook g8 is a very powerful move, and here is why. If white plays c3, black goes knight e6, and after bishop takes f6, g takes f, queen f3 is not good for white, because that's when the rook on g8 makes such a great difference. After knight f4, white is simply lost. After g3, even bishop g4 is good. So what is to do for white in this position? Well, if we take on f6 after gf and we don't play queen f3, then there is no way white can stop black from playing bishop d7 and castling alongside with the possibility knight f4, where black is going to have a better position with an extra pawn. So now I'm going to show you the best possible continuations and plus the best continuation. Well, at first I was trying to, I spent quite a bit of time find a reasonable defense for white, and I couldn't. Reasonable response for white, and I couldn't. And I came to the extent that I refused to play bishop g5, and I started considering c3 in this position. c3, but then bishop e6, and it looked for a moment that white is okay, because after bishop e6, fe. This is okay position for white. They lose exchange, but they get very interesting compensation. Queen takes d4, bishop takes f1, e takes f. Every move is forced. Bishop a6, f takes g, rook g8, bishop h6. Well, I wouldn't say white is doing real well, but it's very playable position. For queen h4, attacking bishop and threatening checkmate, white has queen e3, and game goes on. Position is very balanced. Knight d2 is the next move, and strong pawn on g7. Well, I thought this may be it. Maybe that's how we should play in order to keep all this variation alive. But it's not so. That doesn't hold. And why that doesn't hold, we're going to look now in a moment. That's how I was fascinated by the number of possibilities here. And you may want to get involved in continuing further research. But I thought I did thorough research, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are more possibilities from either side. Bishop c4, bishop c5, castle. So let's get back to this position. d4, bishop takes d4, knight takes d4, knight takes d4, f4, d6, and c3. But this position is not good for white because of highly unexpected response by black. And move is bishop g4, attacking the queen, which leaves white only one move, queen d2. And that's an ugly looking move, to take the square away from knight and also block your own bishop. But there are no other moves. On queen a4, bishop d7 will be with the tempo, and if white plays for a draw, obviously black wouldn't accept it. Go to c6 or e6. Now they won a tempo, they have extra pawn. So c3 is not good because of bishop g4. Now on queen e1 will be knight c2, and on queen d3 will be bishop e2. In both cases, white is losing. So if queen d2 is the only move, now bishop goes to e6, and white has absolutely no compensation for a pawn. That's not good. So I was really puzzled, and I didn't know what should we do to try to keep this variation alive. And here my conclusion. What we have to do, we have to play fe, de, bishop g5, queen e7, play knight a3 as we used to play in the previous variations. And now if black plays bishop e6, which is the most natural but by far not the best move, then we are okay. Just you have to see the first part of this DVD, and it was very, very cleanly analyzed to details. But if black comes up with rook g8 move, we have to be very, very precise in order to get some kind of a compensation. What we have to do is we have to play c3, black goes knight e6, but we shouldn't take the knight on f6 because that justifies rook on g8, and white has really bad game here. What white has to do is to play bishop e3 and trying for compensation here. Now, let's look. This position would have been good for white if the rook was on h8, because then black would castle, and it's very difficult to look for a compensation here. But black already committed themselves to castling queenside. Knight takes e4 gives white very good game. After queen d5, knight d6, queen takes e5, and on bishop d7, simply bishop d5 can be played. And if black castles, bishop takes a7. You see white got his pawn back and has very, very strong position. Black is cramped. And b6, I have to point, is not good because of queen e2, threatening queen a6 with a mate. And white is doing very well. But this is just in case black takes the pawn they are not supposed to take. And obviously, when Rivka was suggesting rook g8, she would never even consider taking pawn on e4. So let's go on with the variation. Bishop d7, according to plan, is the best move, and black is intending to castle queenside. Queen b3 by white and b6 by black. Now at first, when I started analyzing this position, Rivka was evaluating this as a totally lost position for white. I did not agree with it because I have a feeling here white has good enough initiative, and as we know, Rivka has no feeling, but Rivka has deep understanding. So feel is not something computers have, and I let Rivka make best moves. But Rivka didn't want to play knight b5 in this position. And that's understandable. After b6, bishop e2 is the best move for white. Well, knight b5 will be c6. And after knight takes a7, rook takes a7, queen takes b6, rook a8. White has some compensation. They can go rook d1, but it's not nearly enough for an extra piece. So this cannot be considered. So bishop e2 is the best move, giving knight chance to go to c4, and also stopping knight takes e4 due to queen d5. So natural response after bishop e2 for black is castling. And this position I was analyzed carefully, and Rivka wanted to make one and only one move for white is knight c4. Although she is saying that after knight c4, black is much better, which I agree 100%. Knight c4, I don't like move at all, although it's not that clear. King b8. Now knight takes e5. a4 is not good. a4 looks like natural move, and white is going to get very strong attack after a5, but knight f4 I think shatters white's illusions. After knight f4, bishop f3, queen e6, very powerful pin, and on a5, b5, white can play rook a4 here, but that's a bad position. Rybka claims that it's very bad for white, and I agree absolutely with the evaluation. After knight c4, that's what happens, but knight after a4, that's what happens. But knight takes e5 is quite playable. So, the conclusion is this. This is one option to play knight c4 and knight takes e5 and get to position we're going to get in a couple of moves now. Or there is another, even more interesting continuation. But let's finish knight takes e5. After knight takes e5, knight takes e4. Now, knight takes e5, knight takes e4. Now what is there for white to play? White has to get black. Actually, in this position is also another option. An even better move is knight c5. And after knight takes d7, rook takes d7, queen c2 has to go, knight c takes e4, and bishop f3. Well, I'm not a big fan of this position for white because I don't think they have enough compensation. Rooks will be doubled. Yeah, white does have bishop pair, but I think black is still better. The continuation I find a lot more interesting and promising for white is the continuation is knight to b5. Now, what happens after knight b5? Let's look at it. Let's get to this position from very beginning, slowly. In this position, after bishop e2, black castles, and here is the move that at first Rybka really hated, and she didn't like knight b5, but that's the move kind of I like. I think this is most natural move in this position. And black plays king b8, and then Rybka found some very interesting counterplay for white. We together kind of created some interesting possibilities for white. After knight b5, king b8, we go a4. Knight takes c4, that's the best continuation, because if knight f4, then bishop c4, and on knight takes e4, a5, with a very strong attack for white. Knight f4 is not the right move. So knight takes after a4, knight takes e4, and at first Rybka really didn't like it, saying that white has very bad position. a5, and best move for black is knight d2. knight d2. And now, if white takes on d2, then queen c5 check. And notice that white actually bishop takes b5 move. Queen c5 check wasn't as good, but bishop takes b5 followed by rook takes d2, and white has no compensation. But what we're going to do on knight d2 is we simply play queen a4. That's the move Rivka at first didn't like, and then she started liking it very much. After queen a4, bishop takes b5, bishop takes b5, queen takes b5, and here is the position. Now b6 pawn is hanging. After a b, bishop takes b6. So black plays in this position rook d6, and after a takes b, c takes b, taking with a pawn will be met by queen a6, so c takes b, and now rook fd1. Let's evaluate this position. And at first, Rivka gave big advantage, like several moves ago, to black. And then I would see move by move, the advantage was, for black's advantage was decreasing. And I think in this position, white has everything that attacking side would like to have. They have two very powerful bishops aiming on the king side. They are 2 pawns down, they have open file, and black's king is very far from being safe. So this is another option for white to play. I think there are very exciting possibilities. By the way, e5 pawn is hanging as well. So I think this is very exciting possibilities from both sides. And as I already mentioned, I wouldn't be surprised if we see more and more possibilities emerge for white and for black. It's very, very rich position for exploration and for novelties. But this is something I would recommend you to try for white, and something for you to know if white tries this against you. Very rich position, very interesting continuations. I hope you enjoy this chapter, and this is kind of bonus addition to the first part of this DVD on Giuoco piano. I don't know if it's called Giuoco piano once you play d4, but anyway, that's something I can recommend to play for both sides. Black may come up with more innovations and more improvement, and so will white. Thank you very much, and enjoy the topic.